Welcome back, everybody. I'm still monkeying with my camera here, but I am Brian Lee Durfee, author of The Forgetting Moon and The Blackest Heart, both published by Simon & Schuster's Saga Press. Today, I'm going to be reviewing book number 4 in Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun, The Citadel of the Autarch. I think that's how you say it. The Citadel of the Autarch. Book number 4 in Gene Wolfe's Book of the New Sun. You can find my reviews of books 1 through 3 on the channel, and then we've got book 5 that we will be reviewing later. We always review the covers first. So, each one of these covers was done by the great science fiction fantasy illustrator Don Maitz. This one's probably my favorite, the one that was on book number 1. This was a great one for book number 2. Another great Don Maitz painting for book number 3. Book number 5 doesn't really get an illustration, but let's just put all these up here and look how awesome they are. We get another great Don Maitz painting for book number 4. However, the publisher decided to put this gawky blue weird, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense with the rest of them. They should have just did the painting, have it bleed off all sides and not frame it in this blue. Great illustration. Great illustrator for 3 books. Great illustrator for book 4. But then they get up with the stupid publishing. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's happening. I mean, why, publishers? Why do you do things consistently for 3 books, and then on the 4th book, let's just fuck around like a bunch of idiots? And then on book 5, they just don't even do illustration at all. It's like, whatever. I give up. Sometimes I just want to give up. What is this book about? Well, it's the Book of the New Sun, The Shadow of the Torturer. All of these are about Severian. He's a torturer. He's trained as a torturer. He gets kicked out. And early in book 1, he gets kicked out of his torturer's guild. And he's kind of becomes like a wanderer. He just wanders Earth. Now, it's called Earth, but it's spelled U-R-T-H, like that. It's an old Earth. If you've read the Sword of Shannara or any of the Shannara books, you know that those take place in a post-apocalyptical Earth that is turned medieval. Same concept with these books. Post-apocalyptical Earth that is turned medieval. And Severian is wandering through this landscape. There's a lot of weird Earth technology that he sort of runs across. It's not really explained by the author, Sometimes there's what appears to be starships in the sky. Other times there's weapons that appear to be like pistols. In fact, in book 4, he actually picks up a pistol. In one of my greatest scenes, he picks up one of these ancient Earth weapons, figures out how to use it, and he fires it. And Gene Wolfe's description of the sound it makes is brilliant, because he describes it exactly the way if you were living in medieval times and you'd never heard a gunshot or a cannon shot or a dynamite or anything, it would sound like just crazy thunder and lightning, right? And so that's the way he describes it. So Severian is wandering through this post-apocalyptic Earth landscape that's now just basically a medieval landscape, and he's got his sword that he's had a lot of adventures through the first 3 books. Okay, we won't get into that. He's got his sword, Terminus Est. My favorite name for a fantasy sword, Terminus Est. He's got the Claw of the Conciliator that's on his hand, so he's got these few magic talismans with him, and he's still just kind of a wandering. Now, he's starting to figure out that he is sort of like a journeyman, sort of a savior figure, sort of like a Christ figure, because The sun is dying. That's why it's called the Book of the New Sun, because the sun is dying. The land is starting to freeze. There's a lot of glaciers, a lot of snow. There's a lot. I mean, it's just things are getting dire. And he's like, he's starting to figure out that there's this prophecy of the new sun. He's starting to think maybe I'm the new sun. And so we're dealing with prophecy. We're dealing with high fantasy. We're dealing with sword fights. We're dealing with torturers, thieves, assassins, all of the great things that we love, magical creatures, weird things, undersea battles. Actually, this is the first book that actually has like a huge battle in it. The first 3 books were more of just like Severian's own personal duels with different enemies. Now we get actual huge battles coming into play. And it's just a great thing. It's so well written. If you watch my other reviews, you understand that, these are so well written, and we start to get more hints of what's going on in the universe as they start to talk about the men of Earth in ancient times, sailing between the stars and leaping from galaxy to galaxy. So we're not just dealing with a fantasy book here, but we're also kind of dealing with a science fiction book. Well, the whole thing is, I would call this science fiction more than fantasy. This is almost kind of like on par with Dune in its world building and world creation and characterizations and prose. Just Gene Wolfe's prose alone is why you would want to read these books, because his prose is just flows so beautifully off the page. You love reading it just for the beautiful writing. And then the story on top of that makes it great. However, in this book, which is I'd probably rank it as my least favorite of the 4 I have not read this one yet, but of the 4 so far, I rank this one probably 4th because there's these weird interludes. Now, if you've read the Stormlight Archives, you know that Brandon Sanderson has these interludes from the very beginning of the Stormlight, all his books, these interludes where we get sort of bits and pieces of world building through characters who aren't the main characters. They're just sort of, we don't know what they are. They're just other characters in the world telling a little interlude story. We get a lot of that in this book, and it hasn't so far happened in these other books. And so I was a little bit jarred by it in these books, and so I wasn't really interested in those interludes that much. In fact, my eyes were sort of glazing over during them. And that's the only negative thing I can even say about this book or this story as a whole, because it is magnificent. One of my favorite. I mean, if you saw my top 40 favorite fantasy series of all time, you know these were on it, because I have read these first 4 way back in the Wayback Time Machine. I read them a long time ago, 30 years ago, something. And they found their way into my top 40 fantasy series of all time. If I was to redo my top 40 fantasy series of all time, these would fall higher on the list. These would almost probably be in the top 10 at this point. I think they were in the top 30. Anyway, you get it. Now, here's the thing. If you're thinking of buying these books, this is a little advice for you. If you're thinking of buying these books, let me get the rating out of the way first. I give this an 8.5 out of 10. The others I think I gave 10 out of 10. This one dips a little bit. If you're thinking of buying these books, you can buy the individual copies on eBay for quite a lot of money. Or you can just go to Amazon.com and get the omnibus editions, which it's kind of like all the books in one. It's going to be much easier for you to get them that way, where buying them individually like this is difficult now. Here's the thing. There's book number 5, The Earth of the New Sun. I have never read this, and so I'll be reading it soon to see how the whole story wraps up. And I heard that things get wacky in this book. I've heard that all of the sci-fi fantasy mashups that he's been doing in these first 4 books here, I've heard they all come together in this 5th book to just a mind-blowing space opera tale. And I'm right, and that's what they say. We go from high fantasy to straight space opera with this, and I'm looking forward to it, because I want to see how that transition is made. I just do. I think it's going to be cool. I think it's going to be badass. And if Gene Wolfe did it, dude's a genius. It's going to be great. So, like I said, book 4, The Citadel of the Autarch, thumbs up. Not quite as enthusiastic as a thumbs up as the other 3. And like I said, I can't wait to get to book 5 over here.